Hey, y'all, welcome back to the Don't Mom Alone podcast. I'm your host, Heather McFadden, and this is the place where I get to walk alongside you and connect you with people and resources so you know that you don't mom alone. And in this episode number 520, I'm welcoming to the show Mary Marantz.
Not to get too complicated, but basically that's that theory behind more is caught than taught. My dad would always say, you can do anything you want. You're going to college, do whatever you want. Like limits, there's no limit. But on himself, he would say, when I would say, hey, what if you tried to grow the business this way? Or what if you tried to make your life easier this way? He would say, kid, let me tell you, this is the way it is. This is the way it was. This is the way it always will be. And I catch myself thinking that all the time.
There is a lot happening in this episode, and it may need a re-listen or two because Mary, who has overcome a lot of her story, she shares in the very beginning of this of growing up in a single wide trailer, going through Yale Law School. But she would even say that major milestone and even writing books didn't get rid of this inner monologue and this self-sabotage that she found herself stuck in. And so she wrote a new book called Underestimated to help you and others and even herself make a mental shift to move past all of the unhelpful ways we are thinking about ourselves and our purpose and our success journeys. And I think you're going to really connect with Mary. She's very tender, very kind, a gentle guide. And so let's get right to it. Here we go. Mary, I am thrilled to get to know you better and thrilled to get to share you with my listeners because you have a word for us based on your own journey. And you've written some of it in a previous book called Dirt, and now you have a new one called Underestimated. Come on. Here we go. And what I love is I'm not a big fan of woo-woo, and you aren't either.
Right.
Go big, go home.
Right.
Strive.
Nike style. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
No, just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we all need these pep talks and permission slips of yeah, you were put on this planet for a reason.
That's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's go back. And I want you to, before we get into all the goodness, for the people who don't know, welcome to the conversation, people. Tell a little bit of your background, your story, the quick, although y'all go get Dirt and read more.
Yeah, I it's so funny. Everybody's like, tell us the quick backstory. And I'm like, in the beginning, I was born.
My mother first thought of conceiving me. No. Yeah.
For everybody who's meet me for the first time, the sort of elevator pitch version or movie trailer version of my life is that I grew up in a single wide trailer in very rural West Virginia on the top of a mountain called Fenwick Mountain. And when I say single wide, I mean it in every sense of the word. Like a lot of times people can hear trailer and they think of a nice double wide with a permanent foundation. No, whatever stock photo shows up when you Google dilapidated single wide trailer, this would be it. Or if you're really curious, you can go to thebookdirt.com and that's actually the trailer I grew up in on the cover. And so surprising to no one, trailers in the 1980s were not really built to last. They were sort of these tin cans. And being a child of the 80s, I contributed to that greatly because the feral cats that we were as the children in the neighborhood would actually crawl our way all the way up on the top of this trailer, which was really high up, and use it as the world's most painful slip and slide anytime it would rain. And so shocking to know when the roof starts to leak, the ceiling starts to cave in. I always say the people who are my people know what ceiling drywall looks like right before it gives way. In this sort of pregnant pause before the muddy water comes down. And then the floor starts to cave in and you have to know exactly where to hopscotch on the brown shag carpeting to keep from going all the way through. My dad's a logger, so he'd track home this mud in his boots that would mix in the carpet. We had stray animals inside that would mix in the carpet. And so I said, you don't know where the brown shag carpeting ended and the dirt began. And for me, this was always a place called home. And when you fast forward in my story a bit to get to the movie montage, skip to the good part. Can we skip to the good part? I end up at Yale for law school, which is sort of on the one hand, not the usual outcome we would expect with a story like that. But also, on the other hand, as a society, we are familiar with that underdog trope. We've seen that movie. We've read that book. We know the humble beginnings to the Ivy League or to sports stardom or whatever the case is. And so, in many ways, dirt and underestimated go hand in hand. If dirt is my story, underestimated is sort of like I've been jokingly calling it a textbook, although I think it's way more fun than a textbook of like, why are we the way we are if we grew up with hard things in our story?
Mm. I love how you just phrased everything you just said. And I can picture the single wide because my dad came from similar, and so when we would visit my grandparents,
Mm.
that's where we visit, and visit his brother, that's where we visit,
What state was that in?
Indiana.
Mhm.
And then he was the one who went to law school, and we were the one with the home that
No
everybody would
way.
come for holidays, and yeah,
Wow.
so but I did not have that story, right? I had the
Mm.
great big house and the land, and yet I can relate to the mental things that hold us back,
Yeah.
no matter the start, the
Yeah.
lies of fear and the lies of letting people be bigger in our life and staying small
Yep.
because small is familiar, or I mean whatever, for whatever reason, shrinking down. Like, I get all of those things, and so I love that you have this tiny shift we can take. And I want to talk about the shift, and then we're going to talk about some of your journey and like what you've learned about
Mm.
not staying underestimated. But you have like 2 pages dedicated to this shift.
Yep.
And I want examples for you and me because I could
Mhm.
feel, I was like, okay, what would that look like for me?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
define the shift.
Yeah, so for people to really understand the shift, we have to bounce to the chapter right before it, which is called Self-Sabotage is a Shot Glass. And so for everybody listening, and you're playing a little bit of catch up here, the book is premised on the basis of fear's a really boring liar. And the same broken scripts it uses on me, it uses on you. The same ones it tries to use on you, it uses on me. And once we can really start to boil it down, it actually becomes this very manageable foe in the room. We could even start to say, I'm gonna make you a friend or a frenemy, to use to predict when I'm on the right track. The first 2 chapters kinda lay out this ongoing metaphor of, like, we're pushing a boulder up the mountain over and over again, and it just seems to feel harder for us than it does for everybody else. There's this resistance that we're pushing against. Feels like we're trying to sprint through molasses. We blink at the very last minute, right before our breakthrough moment. We lose our grip and we lose our way, and the boulder rolls all
Like,
the way
we
back.
have the opportunities even. Like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I think the thing I think is I've been given so many opportunities
Mm.
that I'm blowing.
Oh, yeah. It's so interesting because when I was writing this book, I mean, the most target reader are the people like me who have this, like, didn't come from a lot story, and I had a couple coaching clients say, "Mary, don't forget us, the ones who came 1 generation after that, because I assure you, we have, like, not only all of those limiting beliefs, but now we have that guilt of, like, it should be easier. This should
Yeah.
be
And even
easier."
in this podcasting journey, or I was like reflecting on it even yesterday, I'm like, I get invited into the rooms and I feel like I blow it.
Interesting.
Like, I should have better connections and networks with these people because I've brushed shoulders with so many people along the way who have influence and who've gotten to the top of the mountain. And yet somehow I find myself back at the bottom again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that I think you can hit from a lot of different people with that analogy of like almost and then back again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a podcaster myself, so I'm like, "Ooh, I can't let that one go by. Hold on. Let's just talk about that for a
Pause
second."
for a moment. Yes.
When you feel like that feeling of blowing it, or I should have, like, made a better friendship with them, or, I should have made it into their circle. For you, is there, like, an element of, like, you hold people at this is one of mine. I hold people at arm's length. I reject people before they can reject me. Is it a feeling of, "Oh, they only sort of liked me when I had the show, but it's not a true friendship. Like, it was only for, like, what
Mm,
I could offer." Like, what's the thing there?
right. I know. That's what I've been processing. Even just this trip I just went on with very good friends that I'm in a life team with every month. I was thinking at the end of a trip together, I would think we would be more connected and like
Mm,
more tightly bound. I'm thinking, am I holding back? Is this what
interesting.
I'm bringing to the table? And I can totally, you and I have connected on some of our wiring being similar, even if our stories are very different,
Yeah.
of always feeling like everybody has some manual on how to do this and we've missed it.
Mm,
It comes
yep.
naturally for everybody else and we've got a missing. And so yeah, I don't know for me like if all the ingredients are there for success and I'm not
Right.
And to me, success, I'm not big on like achieving goals, but more relational success.
Mm, yep.
Yeah. Do you get that? This has turned into therapy, Mary. That
That's
was
pretty
not the
normal.
goal.
That's pretty normal.
Okay.
Well, what I'm hearing there, and we talked before we hit record, but I think everybody will catch up with this quickly, is that we have a similar Enneagram type in the form of being we look like type 3 achievers, but we're actually self preserving fours who try to achieve our way into safety. And fours are notorious for feeling like we have this fatal flaw or this missing piece that disqualifies us from whatever the it is, including like being friends with that group of people or, people wanting to get closer to us or being picked for the team or whatever the case may be. And so you had mentioned this missing handbook. That's actually chapter 4, going back for everybody listening. That's chapter 4. That's second guessing is a missing handbook.
Yep. Yep.
Every chapter is a different face of fear because fear really only has 2 gifts at all. One is to be able to change its voice, to throw its voice to sound like us in our own heads, and the other is to be able to shapeshift and change its face so quickly that it becomes a really slippery enemy.
Mm.
And so in chapter 3, bouncing back to that for a second, self-sabotage is a shot glass which sets up our shift. I first have to admit to you and all the people listening that my guilty pleasure is following really cheesy success accounts on Instagram. Like the cheesier, the better. Mostly because I like to hate follow them in my head. These are the ones with like lions and
You're
Lamborghinis.
like mocking them, and that's
Yeah.
why you follow. Yeah. And that's what's bringing you pleasure. It's like, oh,
Yes.
they're so silly.
Roar until you get everything you came for and like private jets with Albert Einstein quotes on them, whatever. And so this one day it was like a quick scroll by, and this was a very different kind of post from one of these accounts. And it sort of, has profoundly impacted my life because I'm talking about it, on every show I go on, basically. And it was a post, a picture of a shot glass. And it said, if you think you have the capacity of a shot glass, then every time you get a little bit more than that, you will subconsciously shrink yourself back down. And I added into the tiny containers you believe you belong in. And so, very shortly after that, I had Dr. Allison Cook on my podcast, and we were talking about her book, The Best of You. And I said, how do we stop doing this if we don't even know we're doing it? And we pulled up this part of her book that said, if you didn't grow up with a lot, if you grew up in chaos and instability, I feel like that's for somebody listening, you will sort of continue to return to it over and over because it's familiar. And the way that we break out of that survival mode is we begin to set small, they have to, be manageable, but important. They also have to matter to us commitments to ourselves, and then we actually keep them. And she said, as we do that, as we honor commitments, both big and small, she looked me right in the eye through the lens, like we're looking at each other. And she said, Mary, you are showing yourself, you're teaching yourself there's a grown up in the room who can be trusted. That grown up is you. And so, a big underlying thread running through the book is that one of the reasons we keep dropping that boulder at the top of the mountain and going, just kidding, is we get really, really close to other eyes being on it, other people looking at us while we do this thing we want to do. You're going to read this book, you're going to listen to this episode, you're going to come to my talk. Just kidding. And so there's this undercurrent of a fear of success. There's really an undercurrent below that of, I don't believe I can be trusted with the more I'm being called to. So that I've said this book is for the person who feels like they're being called up to more, called up to greatness, and simultaneously doubt that someone like you will ever get there. And so this shift that I talk about is the theory is that in order to quit playing small, we have to go big. The
Yeah.
opposite would be the opposite swing. I've had a lot of really go big moments in my life, Heather, and it did not change a thing about whether the very next day, I went back to self-doubting and feeling small and playing small. And so we become what we do every day, right? That's the difference between like goals and intentions. And so, what is the small but important commitment to ourselves we're going to start setting and keeping every day? So the shift becomes we think to quit playing small, we must go big. But ironically and paradoxically, some of the most important work you will do to quit playing small actually begins by starting small. And then we build up from there. Whew, that was a mouthful.
But so well said. That was very, you have written well and you are speaking it well.
Oh, good.
And that's the thing. Like, I was like, okay, so what would be a small commitment?
Yeah. So, in the imposter syndrome chapter, that's chapter 6, imposter syndrome is a sheet of thin ice. And it's this constant feeling of you're walking into every room and the bottom's going to drop out at any minute. Chapter 5, bouncing back one, is not enough as a blank space. And I say, if not enough is the feeling that there's a missing piece or a fatal flaw that disqualifies you from this work you feel called to do, then chapter 6 is the fear that everyone else is going to realize it soon too. And so in the imposter syndrome chapter, That is such a beautiful deep dive into the original study that coined the phrase from Clance and Imes, where they actually called it the imposter phenomenon among high achieving women. And so, they point out, and Dr. Margie Worrell points out that if you have imposter syndrome, it's actually a good sign in one way. Like, this is not for those of us among the ranks of mediocrity. Like, imposter syndrome does not bother you if you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm any good at like binge watching 12 hours of the show on Netflix,
If you're taking no risks,
Yeah.
you will feel no imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, one of the things that might make me feel like an imposter, for example, is, oh, I'm always sliding in with my hair on fire at the last minute. I don't prepare enough. And so, what I talk about in that chapter is looking for the evidence to the contrary. I went to college on a full debate scholarship, and we would try to overwhelm our opponents with evidence to the contrary. And so, I can sit there and literally, I'm rewiring my brain as I literally list off 10 times recently that I prepared well in advance because as of recently, we are allowed to become a new thing. We are allowed to be this thing in process and to change. I am becoming, through small intentional daily acts, a person who prepares in advance and who, when I stand in these goals, can feel confident standing there because I know that I have not just like achieved the things and gotten the trophies and gotten the gold stars, but on the inside, I'm
Mhm.
becoming a person who feels prepared.
Okay. So the small thing would be being prepared.
It would actually be that's part of it, but even
But
more
even the
importantly
reflecting.
is reminding
Yeah.
yourself, because it's so easy to go, "Oh, I'm always like this. Why am I the
Yep.
way I am?" And
Yep.
it's like, "Hold on a second. Let's catch that lie mid-sentence. Are you still that way, or are you
Mm.
becoming a new thing?"
Y'all know I'm on the lookout to clean out some of the unhelpful chemicals that are in our foods and our different skin products. Well, today I want to tell you about the replacement I've made in our cleaning supplies. And I've heard from lots of people who are real deep divers into this topic. And they said, oh, yeah, the one that you're using is the best. And it's called Branch Basics. Now, not only do I not have to worry about toxicity of Branch Basics because there's no synthetic fragrances, there's no harsh chemicals, but also I don't have to worry about is it going to work because it is all so effective. Whether I'm cleaning my kitchen counters, whether I'm cleaning mirrors, whether I'm using their soaps. And I also love that they make it really easy. When you get their kit, it comes with all the different bottles, but you then have this concentrate that on the side of the bottle, it tells you how much of the concentrate to add and how much water it adds to add. And so it becomes really cost effective. Each bottle ends up being like $2.13, which is a lot cheaper than the conventional cleaners that you'll find at the grocery store. So you're getting a clean cleaner, you're getting effective cleaner, and you're saving money. So all of their products are made from plant and mineral-based ingredients. So they're human safe, they're biodegradable, and they're especially safe for babies, kids, and pets. This company was founded by 3 women, and I think that y'all, if you haven't tried it, it is worth a try. Make this year the year you say goodbye to toxic products. Right now, our listeners get 15% off the premium starter kit by using the code DMA at branchbasics.com. That's 15% off your new Branch Basics premium starter kit at branchbasics.com with the promo code DMA. Make 2025 your cleanest, healthiest year yet with Branch Basics. So, like, are you ever sitting, okay, are you sitting down and you're like, okay, I'm going to commit this week, I'm going to, and it's a small thing. Are you making a list of small commitments? Like, I'm getting,
Mm. Yeah, I think, like, for me, like, a lot of mine come down to I'm going to do a better job of taking care of the houseplant that is Mary. And so, like, have I gotten my walk in today? Have I seen sunlight? Have I had water? Have I spoken kind words to myself? So, those are a lot of the places that I'm living. But, like, our people pleaser, for example, in chapter 9, it might be like that small shift is I want you to tell just one person no this week, right? Just get comfortable exercising the muscle of no is a complete sentence. Because it's one thing to put that on a scripty quote on a, private jet. It's another thing to actually have to disappoint someone. And for the people pleaser, that is a deep rooted belief from childhood that any kind of conflict, any kind of separation from other people is a threat to their very survival. So to their brains, somebody, finishing a sentence in an email with a period instead of an exclamation point. Thanks, period, instead of thanks, exclamation point. Their brain reacts as if they've just been, kicked out of the primal tribe, right? Like this, the primal instinct part of their brain in the earliest days of man, the separation is equivalent to I will now be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger,
Yeah.
So it feels so much more life-threatening than it actually is. So just telling one
Yeah.
person no, and you build up a little bit of a muscle. We do not become people who are fit by going to the gym once. We go
I
day after
know. I
day after
wish.
day.
Oh, I
Me
wish.
too. Me too.
I mean,
Yeah.
this commitment thing to that over and over again. Okay, that is really, really helpful because I read that part and I was like, I need more. I want more.
Mhm. Well,
Okay.
and so speaking of more, every
Yeah.
chapter then ends with its own shift. So
Yes.
every different face of fear
Yes.
has a different small shift that you can try.
I love that. So part of your law school story, I'm going to pivot, is you talk about how you were taught good lawyers don't ask questions they don't already know the answers to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's let the person listening. So you only ask questions you already know the answers to.
Yeah.
That
So,
feels safe, right?
yeah. So my very first day of law school, we all kind of file into this big main lecture hall, like the biggest lecture hall in the building, short of the auditorium. And there's a bow-tied professor at the front, and we come
Of
in. It's
course.
just very classic, as you would imagine.
Yeah,
Elwoods was sitting next to me, basically.
totally.
And so he says he gave us like these limited sets of the facts, and he has the defendant's mother on the stand. And he says, "What would you ask her?" And hands shot up all around the room. Not my hand, because I was like, ba, ba, ba. Like, I'm gonna
Can I
get,
get smaller in
can
my
I get
chair? Yeah.
smaller? And they said, ask her where she was during the hours of the incident. Ask her if she searched his room for any evidence. Ask her, if his demeanor seemed different that day. Nope, nope, nope. Just stone faced professor. Like, nope, nope. We were like failing his first exam. And he said, enough. Burn this into your brain right now. More young lawyers have lost cases not because they were bested by the opposition, but because they underestimated witness's ability to go rogue. You don't know her answer to any of those questions. Based on the information I've given you, there's only one right answer, one right question you can ask her. Mrs. Smith, I understand everything you've just told the court today, but just to clarify, you are the defendant's mother, correct? I.e., without saying it, you have incentive to lie on his behalf. And so, what I say in the book is that that was a very specific rule for a very specific set of circumstances that, if we're not careful, runs the very specific risk of being absorbed into the wide open expanse of the rest of our once wild, untamed lives. Don't ask questions you don't already know the answers to. That is a very safe, very set, very sterile life. And I go on in the book with this really fun, long description about how that leads us to a pretty fluorescent lit existence that's honestly kind of mirroring what every woman listening knows what it's like to sit in the gynecologist's office. you know, you're in the paper,
Gown.
wrap. You're
Yes.
trying to
Yeah.
hold all your, seams together so you don't feel exposed. The Clorox is still wet on the floor. The whole thing smells like sterile packages of gauze. Every footstep outside the door makes you kind of pop up and smile this goofy buffoonery of an all shucks good girl sideshow act as if they're handing out gold stars for how well you waited your turn. It's a safe life, it's a sterile life, but it's not where the magic happens. And so I really had to unlearn that because I got to the point, Heather, where I would turn around and go back home, drive into law school, rather than risk showing up and not knowing all the answers. And that's kind of how we show up to our lives if we're not careful.
A fluorescent lit existence. Have you ever watched Joe versus the volcano?
Yeah. Okay. We are going to be best friends
We're gonna
because
be.
that is 100% the imagery I had in my head when I was writing that.
He's like, they're sucking the
Yes.
life out of him.
Okay, that just blew my brain.
Yes.
We
Yes.
are Enneagram 4, self-preserving
Yes.
4,
And
friends for
when
life.
she calls herself a flibberty gibbet, that's
Yeah.
what I always say. I'm a flibberty gibbet. 100%. But yeah, that existence, he's like, there's got to be more than this life of like going to the same place and their fluorescent lights are just kind of, if you don't know, bless your heart. I'm so thankful you don't know what living under fluorescent lights all
That's
the
right.
time.
I can't believe you just said Joe versus the volcano. That's wild.
I know. It's a
Okay.
great
Okay.
movie. So part of that, like you learned that in law school, but I think in childhood, kids are very curious. These are a lot of moms listening.
Yeah.
And they get it ad nauseum. You get kind of sick of like, well, why is that? And what is this? And why is this? And you kind of tune them out sometimes, especially with your phone. Tell us about this ice tray analogy you quote in the book.
Yeah. There's a book called The Agile Mind by author Stanislaw Bachrach, which is a
What?
mouthful, but we learned it for the audiobook. Stanislaw Bachrach wrote The
Okay.
Agile Mind.
Agile mind.
And
Okay.
he talks in the book about how when we are in childhood, our thoughts are very naturally fluid and free flowing. And this is in the context of talking about the parts of our brain, like the limbic brain, that are more wired for doing things like conceptual blending and novelty seeking. They are the ones that connect dots in a way we've never quite seen them connected before, like taking Joe versus the volcano and the gynecologist's office to describe living a life where we're afraid to ask questions we don't know the answers to. That's
Yeah.
novelty seeking and conceptual blending. And he says when we're kids, we're really good at this. And our thoughts are just sort of like, that book is like men are waffles, women are spaghetti. It's like
Yes.
the thoughts are spaghetti.
Yes. I love that book.
Yeah.
That's another good one.
He says, but as kids, we start to go to school, we're taught to put our coats in the right cubbies, and we're taught to have our little color coded charts, and we're taught to follow the rules. And we're taught from, our parents at home and also our teachers not to have 1 billion and one questions, because believe me, as an introvert, I have all the compassion in the world for endless streams of questions coming at you. But he says what happens is that we begin to take our thoughts and compartmentalize them like an ice cube tray, and the thoughts become frozen. They're no
Yeah.
longer overlapping or interacting with one another. And so, our sort of work as adults is both to find our way back to those free flowing thoughts, that play, that imagination, allowing ourselves
Mm.
to get bored, allowing our mind to wander, allowing that part of our brain that is going to bring 80s lyrics and 90s movies and whatever else, and use it to teach other people in a way they've never quite been taught before,
Mm.
to communicate in a way that's never quite happened before, to be an original voice in a world that is full of copy and paste. That we have to find our own way back there, and we have to be very conscious of the questions that we're sort of silencing and crushing, like that professor did to us, of the little voices that are looking up to us.
So in your work and as you've been taking these small shifts, have you found yourself like
Oh,
being
yeah.
more curious?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. 100%. Actually, starting from writing dirt. So, before writing dirt, my husband and I were wedding photographers for 15 years, and we were known for our black and white imagery and like very
Wow.
moody and very iconic and all this. And as soon as I wrote dirt, it was like I could not get enough color. Like it was like Punky Brewster Rainbow Bright. I wanted like rainbow sweaters and rainbow planners. And like I was literally in the store yesterday and we were looking for stamps, and we wound up in the toy department, and there was a blue unicorn with a rainbow mane. It was like a hobby horse, like on a stick.
Yes.
And I literally held it up to my husband, like almost kind of serious, like, can I take this home? Is that okay?
Is this one
And
okay?
I did in fact buy myself a Care Bear again a couple years ago. The
I
pink one.
loved the care when you described ugh, y'all, you have to get the book. You have to get the book, but I don't know if like my like, again, how we're wired, I could so relate to wanting to be the Care Bear with the rainbow
Yeah.
that everybody loves and is so happy, but
Yep.
actually being
Yes.
the tender-hearted one
Yes.
that's the leader, but not like, I don't know, not in the way that you wanna be.
That's right.
Yeah,
The reluctant leader. It's gonna
the
it's gonna hurt.
reluctant leader. Yeah,
You're gonna get your heart hurt. Yeah,
yeah.
so for everybody listening, that's chapter 2, Fears a Broken Script. And oh man, did chapter 12, my inner critic, have a real field day with the fact that I wrote about Care Bears in a very serious thought leader book. But it was this
But so
idea of like,
relatable.
which one would I become? And everybody wants to be the pink, happy, bubbly one everybody loves. But I knew from a young age that I was going to be this sort of stoic, reluctant leader. I knew what the stakes were. I was president of my kindergarten class, so I was a natural born leader, but I knew that it meant I was probably going to walk around in the world with my heart on the outside, and I was going to get it hurt. And I was just going to be the
Mhm.
boring brown Care Bear who's really good at making other people shine, Care Bear stare style. So,
Care Bear
yes.
stare. Oh, yeah, I love that. So, talking about childhood, and we've already kinda compared our differences, but even in yours, I love you were talking about some of your limiting beliefs. I remember you sharing about your dad and his views on the rich, and
Yep.
yeah, you have, quote, "Some of us grew up with a really complicated relationship with more."
Yeah.
So there's when we grow up, our parents kind of either overtly or inadvertently pass
Yeah.
on their baggage to us, and we pick it up. And so tell us about like how the way you grew up informed your view of success.
Yeah.
Someone's going to relate to this.
Oh, yeah. Uh, so, I mean, you have to understand even just a little bit of backstory there that my dad went to work in the woods when he was 12 years old.
Wow.
12.
Yeah, I have a just turned 13-year-old. I can't imagine.
Yeah. And, barely graduated high school. If it was up to him, he wouldn't have graduated high school. He would have just worked full time in the woods. But my grandparents did make him at least graduate high school before making that commitment. And he was pretty, infamous for saying to me, I can actually, so in the book I talk about, he says, like, kid, because he'd always call me kid, let me tell you, there's good people and then there's rich people, and the two are rarely the same. And I can viscerally, Heather, remember a time when we were on the other side of the county, in the like richer side of the county. We were getting pizza at the Pizza Hut, and he pointed up at a house on the hill and he said, kid, if you ever let me catch you being the person who has to have the biggest house in town up there on the hill looking down on people, I will disown you.
Whoa.
And disown you was sort of like a threat that sort of got thrown around a lot. In the area I grew up in, is sort of like a playful thing. So I don't think he actually,
Yeah.
was going to disown me, but he also
But there
sounded
was
a
a
little serious.
you
You know?
you've lost my approval
Yeah.
if that is your goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think I hear that from others, like totally unrelated but related? The school teaches kids about eating fruits and vegetables. The kids get excited about eating fruits and vegetables. They come home and they're like telling their parents, and their parents are like, "No, we're not eating that." Like,
Mm,
and I don't know if it's this guilt shame spiral the parents are in. Like, what do you
yeah.
think? You're too good for us? Am I not giving you enough?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. What did you think it was going on with yours?
I think it's a couple things.
Yeah.
One, I talk more in Dirt about this idea of transformation hurts, not
Mm.
just the caterpillar when it's disintegrating to become a butterfly, which, by the way, that's how that happens. It's not wings out the back, it's caterpillar soup.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, total
What?
disintegration. Total.
Science lesson?
Yeah. Yeah,
Gosh.
wild. But the butterfly also will keep some of the same migration patterns, so it just completely disintegrates, but it remembers who it was.
Oh,
Wild.
wow.
So anyway, I talk about like transformation hurts, and in that I mean not just us, but it can feel like a betrayal of the people and the places that raised us. Like, how do you leave without
Mm.
saying something was always lacking? How do you,
Mm.
want more without saying this was always broken? Whatever.
Mm.
And in Underestimated, I quote Stephen Pressfield from The War of Art, which is a fantastic book I recommend to every creative. And he talks about this idea of the resistance recruits allies. And he said, when the awakening writer begins to break free of resistance, she should expect all the people closest to her to start acting very strange. They will become sullen, they will become withdrawn, they will start to make like jabs. They will tell her that she's different now, she's changed, they don't recognize her, because the fact that the writer is breaking free of her demons, her resistance, only points out to them that they have not, and that they are not doing the work, and that there are things that they wish they were doing. And it's much easier to be mad at her than it is to look at themselves in the mirror. So that's part, when you're talking about the fruits and vegetables, that's what comes to mind for me of
Mhm.
like, it feels like a criticism, it feels like a
Mhm.
critique, it feels like an attack. And then I think like also for my dad in particular, I can remember, and I write about this in Dirt, I can remember being like 4 or 5. So my grandfather passes away suddenly when I'm 2, and my dad at 25 inherits the logging business that was thriving at the time. And within just a couple of years, he's run it so far into the ground that the bank comes and takes our 2 logging trucks. And I'm talking 18 wheelers, not
Oh my
pickup
gosh.
trucks. And, I say, like, I watched him get smaller and smaller as the bank took them away. And so, in my dad's eyes, people with money, people who wear ties to work, they come and take things from people in the world like him. And so, it's really complicated when, like, he's then, raising a daughter who's going to go to law school, who's going to become a business person or what have you. And in that section about like more, some of us have a really complicated relationship with more. It's actually one of my favorite paragraphs in the book. And it talks about some of us have a really complicated relationship with more. We were simultaneously expected to excel and achieve, to break all the firsts of our family trees, to be the ones to go out and make our families and our hometowns proud, but to simultaneously never go so far out that they no longer recognize us. It is a, delicate tightrope to walk. Indeed, this underdog story threaded through the eye of a needle They love the spotlight we're standing in so long as it reflects well on them. But watch out for that first perceived misstep. It's a real doozy on the way down. And I think that is sort of that the last 25 years of my life have kind of been defined by that of like, how do you honor where you came from without having where you're going feel like a betrayal?
Man, that's real.
Yeah.
And your current relationships, is your dad still living?
Yes.
And
Yep.
have you managed to thread the underdog through the needle? I don't know how you said that. It was amazing. Um, I mean, walking that tightrope, has that gone?
I would say it's an ongoing tightrope.
Yeah.
I mean, make absolutely no mistake. There's nobody prouder than my dad of the fact that I went to Yale for law school, of the life that I'm building, of the fact that I'm, an author now. There's no one prouder. And also at the same time, you can sort of hear this like dread or this like hesitancy of like, what's going to be in this book? Or like,
Yeah.
how do you feel about your story now? Like there's just this constant concern of, was he enough? Did he do enough? Was he a good enough dad? And I
Mm.
mean, that's a very human
Yeah,
response. You know,
totally.
I
I don't
bet a
want my
lot of
kids
people
writing any
wonder that.
books. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't need to write any books. I'm gonna shut that right down. Yeah, that is something I hadn't even considered because, again, being the generation next, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, we've paved the way for you to now succeed. So
Yeah.
there was performance pressure of like, what are you gonna do with that? You've
Right.
been given X, Y, and Z. Are you gonna blow it?
Yeah. Were they really tough on you, like, you have no excuses kind of thing?
I don't know that they said there was no excuses. I would say there was a high expectation.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much was on me just perceiving or actually said,
Mm.
but it was just the environment even of who you then are friends with, right? So now you're catapulted into another society ranking.
Yep.
So all of your peers are achieving and performing.
Right.
So it's a different, I don't
You know
know.
what's really interesting that just came up for me is having the experience of going to law school. And even there were experiences earlier in my life where it was like learning pretty, it's been like a common thread of my stories, treating people, it's that whole idea. If you can make celebrities feel like normal people and normal people feel like celebrities, like I've been around people who had a ton of money, first in law school and then later on with the wedding business. And it
Yeah.
was very interesting to start to observe almost an embarrassment
Mm,
of the money that they came from. And then there was this like relief when it came up that I had gone to Yale for law school because it kind of felt like they could sort of they didn't need to feel weird about having a pedigree of an education or a pedigree
mhm,
of a family they came from, even though my story could not have been more different. It was like, oh, we do have common ground, or you're not going to judge me for what I came from, which was like the other end of the spectrum. You're not going to judge me for coming from a lot. I'm like, well, if you don't judge me for coming from a little,
yeah, why are we judging at all, right? Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you're someone like me and you are trying to take control of your health journey, but you are struggling with knowing where to get good information about what's going on in your body and how to do that, I am thrilled that I get to connect you with Function. Function is an all-in-one health platform. It starts with over 100 advanced lab tests that cover your entire body: heart, hormones, liver, kidneys, thyroid, autoimmunity, cancer signals, toxin, nutrients, and so much more. And how I did is I started by signing up online, and then they helped me schedule my labs. Because I'm perimenopausal, I went twice, once at the beginning of a cycle, once at the end of the cycle. And then I got to see through their platform just different results coming in the different areas of my body function. And it was super, super helpful to see what I already knew to be true and areas that were actually better than I thought they were. I could see what is a place where I could maybe support myself with different supplements. And then it was super, super interesting. There were some heart biomarkers that I even shared with my primary care doctor, and we have come up with a plan to kind of help do some preventative work so that that doesn't become a problem in my future. And I'm thrilled to have that information again so that I'm in the driver's seat when it comes to my health journey. I love that they give you suggestions and information about those supplements, like I mentioned, but also foods that were really helpful to eat as I'm kind of making my own meal plans and figuring that out. I even took their suggestions and put them in Chat GPT, and they created a meal plan for me, which is fantastic. Anywho, what's I found to be true is that I was sitting at dinner the other night with a friend, and she had done the same thing. She'd signed up for Function. She'd done the lab work. It also revealed an area that she needed to take care of. And we were sharing our results side by side. And it's become so popular that Function currently has a wait list, but they are offering my audience the chance to skip it. If you go to functionhealth.com/DMA or enter the code DMA, when you sign up, you will skip the wait list. So that link again is functionhealth.com/DMA or enter the code DMA, and you will get to skip the wait list and take control of your health journey. Okay, has anyone been getting videos on Instagram with like the contouring or just how to do your eyeshadow differently? I don't know about me, but sometimes I'm looking at it and I'm like, people look like clowns. How is this going to look good? And then they blend it all together and they look amazing. Well, I have been playing around with different eyeshadow options thanks to Thrive Cosmetics. And I've already told y'all that they are the unicorn of makeup because one, they solve my problem of having clean ingredients, skin-loving ingredients, and two, that they're high-performing. I know that the products are going to work. They have trademarked formulas and high, uncompromising standards. They're 100% vegan and cruelty-free. And also, they give back. With Thrive Cosmetics, for every product purchase, they donate products and funds to help communities thrive. And I will tell you about my absolute favorite. It is the Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. There are over 40,000, that's a lot, 5-star reviews. But here's what I love. They have this flake-free tubing formula that basically creates a tube around each of your eyelashes. And so it lengthens them, it defines them. But what's great is it stays put. It lasts all day. They have 5 different shades. It's not clumping. It's not smudging. It's not flaking. Any other mascara I use, I end up with dark circles under my eyes by the end of the day. This mascara makes my eyelashes look like I have lash extensions because my eyes can keep growing. The mascara slides right off with warm water. So it basically stays when I want it to and comes off when I want it to. No soap required. And it has ingredients in it that nourish and support to grow longer and stronger and healthier looking lashes over time. So what's great is you can try your new trusty favorites with an exclusive set just for our listeners. New customers can get the Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara and a mini-size Brilliant Eye Brightener, which I love, at a special set price with free shipping if you go to thrivecosmetics.com/DMA. Or you could save 20% off your first order at thrivecosmetics.com/DMA. That's Thrive Cosmetics, and it's spelled CAUSEMETICS.com/DMA for 20% off your first order. Oh, there's so much I want to talk to you about with, there are moms listening. And so what's tricky even in this conversation is I know what happens. Like moms, one, they reflect on their own story and like, where are they getting stuck and where are they underestimating themselves and playing small, especially the moms listening who are in that kids are launching. Motherhood's pretty predictable and it's cadence. Like you just keep doing the next thing, next thing, next thing. Well, now the kids are launching. Okay, who am I and what do I? So there's those moms listening. But then there's also sometimes when we talk about our childhoods, they have fears of like, what am I doing to my kids?
100%.
Like, what messages am I giving my kids? Like your dad, you on the comment about the house on the hill. It's like thinking through this origin story of these critical monologues, these inner critics that keep us playing small.
Yeah.
I think one is being aware of them. And then two, it's like, there's always healing. So even if I really screw up my kids and give them some terrible inner critics, the story ain't over.
That's right.
But I don't know, like I know you kind of process this in the book, but tell us more about like the origins of that and how do we move through it?
Yeah, I mean, I think first it just starts with an awareness that psychologists all the way back to Freud will tell us that the earliest iteration of an inner monologue especially a critical inner monologue that we develop, sounds like the voice of our parents.
Mm.
That's that first time we sort of become, when we're super, super little and we even begin to become aware that there's an external world outside of us, we go through a process of believing the external world is us. Not to
Mm.
get too complicated, but basically that's that theory behind more is caught than taught.
Mm.
It is the idea that if my dad would always say, you can do anything you want, you're going to college, do whatever you want. Like limits, there's no limits.
No limits.
But on himself, he would say, when I would say, hey, what if you tried to grow the business this way? Or what if you tried to like make your life easier this way? He would say, kid, let me tell you, this is the way it is. This is the way it was. This is the way it always will be.
Mm.
And I catch myself thinking that all the time.
Mm.
It is a daily battle, a daily small shift forward, 10 examples when I didn't act that way to try to unwire that because more is caught than taught. And so what he said over me, both itself could have become part of my inner monologue, but what he said over himself and what you, the moms who are listening, say over yourself becomes a big part of that monologue. But you're 100% right that our brains are very thankfully wired for neuroplasticity. We can constantly be creating new connections, new wires. And that as you have that growth mindset to start to be kinder to yourselves and have those small shifts in your lives, you can work to make sure that the most important work with a kid is if you do mess it up, just catch it and like, let's do like a retake of that,
Yeah.
to say, this is the voice that I want actually playing in your head. And it talks about that in chapter 12 about the inner critic of children who are raised in homes that are not critical, that do have that, sort of approval and that validation and that safety and that acceptance. Though, you think like you would prevent a kid from developing the resilience to have self approval and self validation. But the way that we develop, that's actually the most likely child who's going to be able to grow up and become an adult who doesn't need anybody else to validate them, in this really paradoxical way, because they learned how to do that when they were still sort of incorporating what you do into their own identity.
Yeah. Say that part again. I need to hear that again.
Yeah.
So
So,
if you're in the home that is like what? That is the positive,
mm,
affirming,
that's right.
they won't need that when they're adults. Is that what you're
That's
saying?
right. Yeah, they will learn how to do that for themselves. Whereas the child who's raised in a very critical home, a very unstable home, a lot of chaos, they will have to do this work that I reference a lot throughout the book of becoming the grown up in the room who can be trusted. That grown up is you. And it's a lot of reparenting work. It's a lot of becoming that self validating, self approving if you didn't have that modeled for you, if you didn't have self compassion modeled for you as a child. And I say in the book, we just have to pause to say the quiet part out loud. We wish we didn't have to be. We wish we didn't have to do this work. There's a grief there that no one did this for you when you were little. But you can also grieve that and then say it ends with me.
Mm.
And that's what honestly, like I could burst into tears over this because that's what got me up off the floor. I wrote this book 12 hours a day for 12 months straight. Every time I wanted to quit is what got me up off the floor is like the family trees that will say like this ends with me.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of people listening right now where it's like, yeah, I didn't have that growing up, but it ends with me.
And oftentimes I find moms won't do the thing for themselves unless they know that it helps their kids.
Right.
And so what I just heard you saying is by doing that work, by being the person, because it's caught, not taught, your dad said all the things, but then he wasn't believing for himself. Like
Right.
by living small, you're actually limiting your child's future, modeling believing these things, modeling letting go of that inner critic and people pleasing and all the different chapters that you have, letting all of those go, you're actually setting your child up for success more than if you sign them up for 18-month-old soccer and
Right.
the tutoring
Right.
and the all of the activities that we
Is
busy
that a
ourselves
thing?
because that the activity feels like I've got the good mom formula figured out
Mm,
without having to do the actual inner work of like how am I going through the day to day and what are the
yeah.
things I'm believing about myself that are spilling out onto my
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. And for people listening, I bet there's also a real grief. I know there's a real grief in you seeing your kids reach the age you were
Yeah.
when somebody wasn't there for you. And then, like, do they even know how good they have it? There's like that element of it as well. And like, you are able to, like, I think a lot of people are able to have compassion for their little selves when they see their kid reach that age.
Yeah.
And that's a whole thing in and of
That's
itself.
a whole thing.
Yeah.
You call this inherited limiting belief leaks?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so the very first time, I remember, like, the turnaround and kiss your taillights curve we were in coming down Fenwick Mountain, that I told my dad I was gonna go to law school. He said, "Yeah, right, you'll never stay in school that long." It just, like,
Oh, wow.
blurted right out.
You'll never stay in school that long was the belief?
That was the belief, and
Okay.
this to be fair, I was telling him this before I was, probably like a junior or senior in high school, so I hadn't even started college yet, so he was looking at 8 years,
Okay.
7 years. I did
Right.
8 years because I did a
Yeah.
master's in
Yeah.
between, and he barely graduated high school. So, like, to him, like, for a lot of our families going back to that,
Yep.
resistance recruits allies, they have limitations on what they believe and see to be possible, and so when there's somebody else says something that's like, it's I may as well have said the sky was green. He's like,
You're
"Are
gonna
you
be an
kidding? It's blue."
astronaut. You're gonna go touch the moon. Yeah.
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 And so, it was just sort of a quick blurt out. He's apologized for it 1,000 times since. Like I said,
Right.
no one is prouder than him. But for a lot of other people, their families, when they do this, it's less, I say, like drip, slip and drip of the lip and much more like intentional wounding. Because that section sort of starts talking about like water torture and how it's just these slow drips over time that turn into deep wounds. And so, yeah, when we kind of get into like the origin of inherited limiting beliefs, when you go back into like the earliest versions of humans, the ones who had a really strong negativity bias, who believed danger was everywhere, who believed things weren't going to work out, who believed, that this is like Bill Hader as fear in Inside Out, it's like,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Yes.
Well, those people survived the saber-toothed tiger. So they were more likely to then pass down those predispositions for negativity to their offspring and their offspring. So it's like literally the first inherited limiting belief leaks. And
Mhm.
so we have to be just really, really careful of like when we have a limiting belief and we think, oh, that's not possible, or that's never going to work out, or this is just how it's always going to be. Whose voice is that? And
Mm.
are we passing that voice down for another generation?
Moms, you've got good, helpful guidance available to you from Mary. She coaches people through this. If you're finding yourself kind of shrinking and stuck and not making those moves forward, this is your person. So you need to grab a copy. I think it's out tomorrow as this episode releases. So
Yay.
please go get a copy of this amazing book. You won't regret it. And Mary, thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for encouraging us. You weave words beautifully. And
Thank
I'm
you.
so thankful that I found my Enneagram twin.
That's
So
right.
big hearts.
Um, I actually have two fun things for your people, if that's
Oh,
okay to
a
tell at the end.
100%. We love
Okay.
fun things.
Great. So the first one is that in my second book, Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, I actually introduced these 5 achiever types, and they all carry over into underestimated as well of like how the different achiever types get stuck playing small and how they move forward. And so we have the performer who is always on their toes, needs to show
Yes.
both themselves, but for sure other people how far they've come. I am the classic performer. There's the tightrope walker who could care less who's clapping, but they need higher and higher death defying feats to feel the same amount of good. There is the masquerader who does a tricky sleight of hand, pushing other people into the spotlight so they can slink back and hide in these dark corners. The classic people pleaser is our contortionist. They contort because it is easier than to be criticized. And our illusionist in the distance believes that all the conditions to begin and they themselves must be perfect before they can even start. And so if you go to achieverquiz.com or marymarantz.com/quiz, my last name is Marantz. We put together a quiz that takes like 2 minutes to take, 10 minutes if you overthink it. And it's, the questions are light and easy and super fun. And then in true Mary form, the results go super deep. We'll tell you what your type is, how you get stuck playing small, and how your type moves forward from that. And so that's achieverquiz.com. And then if you go to namethefear.com, I'm so excited and thankful this is coming out right before launch day because we have the first chapter up there for free. You could grab it and download it and get a feel for my writing voice, see if you like that style. But even more importantly, while you're there, if you pre order, we have the first 3 chapters you can get right away, but we also have the entire audiobook,
Oh,
which
wow.
I read. It's a huge, huge bonus that my publisher was so kind to offer. So it's kind of like getting 2 books for the price of
Yeah.
one to underline and highlight, and one where I will whisper to you in sweet nothings these 74,000 words about how we feel the fear, name the fear, and move forward anyway. And so that's at namethefear.com. And then I'm at Mary Marantz on Instagram. Come tell me what your achiever type is.
So great. I love it. I love a good quiz, love a good freebie,
Yeah.
and those audiobooks while we achieve and walk the neighborhood with our weighted vests and
Yes. Yes.
the performers out there. Thank you, Mary.
Thank
All the
you.
blessings sent your way. Thanks for being with our people today. So appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, I told you it's a lot. And I have a team that listens to the show, and one of my team members was like, I don't know why, but I just keep crying during this episode. So maybe you needed a Kleenex as well, and it can bring up stuff from our childhood and really those soundtracks, those tapes that we keep playing. And so I'm going to pray over us for a new level of freedom, that those limiting beliefs or words that were spoken over you that are holding you back, that you could bring those to God, and that He could give you new thoughts to think, and that we don't stay rigid, like that ice tray analogy, and that we can continue to come to Him with new thoughts and deeper and further freedom, so we don't pass that on to our kids. So I'm going to pray over us. Lord, you put us in families, and we are so grateful for the families that we've been given, and yet we all are humans who are imperfect, and we react and respond to our circumstances and our own journeys, and we start believing things that are not true about ourselves, about you, about others. And Lord, I pray for the person listening, if any of those things were brought to mind while they listened to Mary's story, that you would guide him or her to more freedom, that that person would hand that thought back to you, that wherever it started, wherever the root of it was, whoever spoke it over them, that they could confess that they've been believing it and hand it back over to you, and accept and receive forgiveness for the false belief, and to ask you for something new that can be true about them and about you and about others, and move forward, Lord. Mainly not underestimating themselves, because as believers, we have you in us, the Holy Spirit, empowering us with resurrection power to do the things that you've placed before us, and to not shrink back in fear, not let fear have a loud voice in our lives, in our hearts, in our minds. And I just pray, Lord, for us to not pass on those fearful thoughts and beliefs to our kids that limit us from the good things you have to further your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen. Oh man, y'all. I hope that you do get to connect more with Mary, because I think what she's sharing with us is just so powerful. Okay, special episode next week. It'll be the Monday before Mother's Day, and I get to speak with the ultimate mother, Patricia Heaton of The Middle, and her husband are going to be on the show, and I'm so excited. I just absolutely adore her. I think she's hilarious. So join me back here next week. Make sure you're subscribed so the show just pops in your favorite podcast player. All right, bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Don't Mom Alone podcast. If you're wanting to connect with more people and more resources to help remind you that you're not alone, head over to don'tmomalone.com. That's where you'll also find show notes with any links mentioned by our guests. Most importantly, I want you to know the good news, the great news that you're not alone, because God has promised to always be with you. With faith in Jesus Christ, the one who died for you and rose again, Jesus said when he left, he was going to leave a helper, a comforter, to be with us. God in us. Moms, that's superpower. So while you're washing dishes at your kitchen sink, while you're driving to and from work, while you're feeding that baby late into the night, while you're cleaning sticky floors, God promises to be just as present with you as when you're worshiping in a church pew. As it says in Zephaniah 3:17, the Lord your God is with you. He is mighty to save. He takes great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love, and he will rejoice over you with singing. Now that's good news. Have a great day.